Okay, everyone, let's go ahead and get started. We're going to talk about hot Bixby tips and tricks. Going to spend about 15 minutes doing that, and then we'll open it up for Q&A. If you want to ask a question, please use the chat feature. And I'm going to go ahead and give the whole presentation, but after the presentation is given, we'll go through the questions one by one. Jonathan, my colleague, is going to help me do that. So let's get started. All right, first of all, introduction. So hi everyone, my name is Roger Kibbe. @Roger Kibbe is my Twitter handle. I'm a senior developer evangelist for Viv Labs. Just a couple personal things. I'm the father of 2 daughters, and I'm a UC Berkeley graduate, so I also have to say, go Bears. Jonathan, you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. My name is Jonathan Pan. I'm one of the Johns that doesn't have an H in the first 4 letters of my name. A lot of people misspell that. Very exciting, I know. And I have 4 too many cats, so you can take a guess as to how many cats I have, but I will say I have 4 too many. So, yeah.
All right. First thing I want to talk about is hef versus ham. What the heck am I talking about when I say hef versus ham? And really it gets down to, with Bixby, there's 2 ways to start Bixby. One is to say hi Bixby, and in that case we call that hef, and that's hands and eyes free. Or you can use the Bixby button, and that's available on all the devices, and that's called ham or hands-on mode. And why do you care about this as a developer? Well, frankly, if you're building a simple experience, you probably don't need to care about it. But if you're building something more complex or something where a user may spend more time interacting with your capsule, it's something you want to consider. And the whole idea behind it is, if I've used a button, in other words, if I'm in ham mode, then the assumption is that I can see the UI of Bixby and I can interact with that UI. On the other hand, if I just say hi Bixby, and today if my phone's across the room, then I may not be able to, whoops, and now I need to mute my phone. Sorry about that, guys. I thought I had turned everything off. Hang on one second. All right. The problem with voice assistants is you get started talking, you use their wake word, and they all wake up. Anyway, back to what I was saying. If I say hi Bixby, and just like that case, what just happened to me is my phone was like 5 feet away from me, face down on my desk, but it picked it up and it started answering. So I could interact with it, but in that case, I was interacting with it, but I couldn't see the screen. So if you're in that hef mode, you want to think about, hey, do I want to probably have my dialogue be more rich? In other words, since the user may not be able to see the UI, I want them to be able to use Bixby in a voice-only mode. Versus on ham, right? I can make the assumption that they're actually seeing the screen, and so maybe the dialogue is a little more condensed, and I'm expecting them to interact with the UI or make that expectation. So there is a special variable, $ hands free. Hang on, let me admit a few late joiners. There is a special variable called $ hands free that lets you determine that. And then you can use that in an if clause in expression language inside, say, your Bixby view or in your dialogue. So a couple of things to consider here. Just because I'm in hef mode, in other words, I said hi Bixby, does not mean that I can't view the screen. We know that more than 50% of the usage of Bixby on the phone is in hef mode, in other words, hi Bixby mode, but we feel a lot of those people actually can see the screen. So I would caution against having a UI that's really different just because you're in hef and ham. What I'd really focus on is making your dialogue particularly rich and allow the user to interact with your capsule voice only if you're in hef mode. The other difference is the microphone turns automatically on in hef. So if I say hi Bixby, and then I'm asking a question of the user, that microphone will turn on and automatically wait, much like what you'd see with a smart speaker. Alternatively, if you use the button to start Bixby and you want to interact with it via voice, then you need to reset and press the button again, or press the button again to interact with Bixby. Like I said, if you're building something simple, you may not need to worry about this, but this is really kind of a VUI and UI design consideration of, can the user see the screen or not, and something to consider when you're building your capsule. Okay, autocomplete. Let's show a little demo of that. So this is a capsule called Color Picker. And here what I'm going to do is I'm going to start entering the name of a color. And what you can see is the autocomplete is below. So I just entered part of the names of a color, and then I chose deep sea. But that's autocomplete. Something you see a lot in mobile apps, something you definitely don't see that I'm aware of in any other voice assistant. And really what it's allowing the user to do is, if they're using the keyboard for input, it's a really nice shortcut. I will say there's special handling. If you are using, hang on, complete admittees. Okay, if you are using contacts, and if you've enabled that and you start spelling the name of a contact, it'll look in the contacts of the user's contacts and autofill for that. Probably use more, and I've seen this used in several places, is if you're entering an address or a location and using the geo library. This is really helpful because as you're typing in an address, it'll actually autocomplete addresses, which is really useful because we obviously know that typing in an address is a pain, and entering an address via voice is even harder. So to do that, you model in the view, and there's an action to actually handle that autocomplete, and use some code that says, hey, here's what's input, here's the output, and then Bixby takes care of that for you. All right. Refresh. Let's see this in action as well. All right, so this is a yoga capsule, and what it does is it tells you to do something, and tells you to do it for 30 seconds. But boom, you saw that. I shortened it so we didn't have to wait for 30 seconds. But if you noticed, it showed it for about 5 seconds and then clicked and said full squat complete, nice. So really a good use of this is an exercise capsule where you want the user to go do something for a while and then refresh the screen, because that's what it really does. It says after n number of seconds, refresh this view, and then you can go in the view in your code and you can change it. In that case, it just changed, in that example, the dialogue at the top that said, you know, start this exercise, in this case, complete the exercise. This was really designed originally for capsules that are rideshare. So for instance, the Uber capsule, it has to refresh to show you how far away your driver is if you've ever used it. But I think there's several other uses. The use I told you about for user tasks. So in this case, that yoga thing, start doing something for a time task, and then Bixby will tell you when it's complete. If you, and I hate to see this, but occasionally there's some long API calls that you need to do. You could do this for a polling function or to tell the user that something is still happening and to be patient and wait. And once you model this in your view and you basically give it a refresh time and say, after X number of seconds, I want you to refresh the display. Okay. All right, next tip. Oops, let's go back there. Continuations and relaxations. So let me just show you a demo of that. So I'm going to find Mexican dinner recipes. Here's the recipes I found. All right, and then I'm going to say, how about vegetarian? So now I'm looking for vegetarian Mexican dinner recipes. And now I'm looking for easy to cook vegetarian Mexican dinner recipes. So you get the idea. So I added vegetarian, I added easy, and it really, you can think of them as modifiers to your search. What you do in Bixby is you model these as continuations in your natural language NLU model. So you can model these as in this example, as you can think about this input of what the action here had, is it had several optional concepts there: meal, cuisine, effort, some kind of modifier, I don't know what you want to call that for vegetarian. And I kept on adding them by saying, how about easy, how about vegetarian, etc. The nice thing about Bixby is if you model those in your view, if you model those in your action, and in your NLU model, you create continuations, it'll automatically handle it for you. So like in an example, I said, find Mexican dinner recipes, and I said, how about vegetarian? Bixby automatically say, hey, you know what? Vegetarian is this modifier concept. I'll stick it in there, and then I'll automatically rerun your action for you, run your code, and in this case, I searched for vegetarian dinner recipe, Mexican dinner recipes. So really good for refinements, the way I'm talking about it. It's also possible, I don't have a demo of this, for replacements. So in the example I gave, if I wanted to say, find Mexican dinner recipes, and then I said, how about Italian? Well, that's not really a modifier. There's not Mexican and Italian dinner recipes. What I'm really saying is find dinner recipes, but instead of Mexican, I want to find Italian dinner recipes. All right? So that would just be modeled by, hey, how about cuisine name, right? As in your natural language model, as a continuation, you'd have your action. It would take your cuisine name in there. It fills it with Mexican in the first one. You say, how about Italian? Bixby replaces Mexican with Italian, and it reruns the query for you. So really, really powerful way of handling kind of natural language queries. And this is the way we all talk to each other. If you think about if you were planning to go to dinner with a friend, you might have a conversation where you kind of narrow down the choices there. The beauty is you can model that kind of dialogue with Bixby. The other thing, and I don't have an example of this in a demo, is what we call relaxations. So what relaxations are, one more participant. What relaxations are is if you get too specific and there's no results, Bixby can drop one of the inputs. So I'm going to give you a contrived example here. You saw I said easy Mexican dinner recipes, vegetarian dinner recipes. Let's say with beef. Okay, I said that's contrived because it's vegetarian, it doesn't have beef. But the beauty, if with beef I modeled as enabling a relaxation, instead of Bixby saying, sorry, I don't have any Mexican dinner, easy Mexican dinner recipes that are vegetarian with beef, Bixby could say something like, sorry, I don't have any beef recipes, but here's easy Mexican vegetarian dinner recipes. So it kind of backs up, and you can model that as a relaxation. Because it's always nicer for the user if they get too specific when they're searching for something to actually get a little bit of an error message, but not get that kind of ugly no results. Like here's your previous results. Why don't you rethink about it and ask me something to kind of refine my query above and beyond that. All right, share via. Let's see this in action. All right, so I am going to use the meme generator capsule. Been around, one of my favorites. I'm going to create a meme. Long lines in airports. I clearly recorded this pre-COVID virus, this particular demo. Long line in airports make me grumpy, with Grumpy Cat in the background, right? Fun meme. There you go. So what I did is I clicked on it. There was a share button there. And what happened is it brought up that built-in Android intent and ability to share. So if you look at that screenshot, now we're back to the presentation. On the very bottom, it says tap to share. That brought up that share menu. So if you're building a capsule, I think meme generator is a great example, where you're building something, kind of the end product is kind of funny, or maybe it's useful, or something that you might want to share, if you use the share via capability, then what it is Bixby is integrating with a native Android share menu. And right there from inside your Bixby capsule, you can click on a button that says something like share this, and that built-in Android share will come up for you. Okay, stories. So my guess is that most of you on the phone have done little or nothing with stories. Just because I know a lot of us do. Myself, I underutilize them. But it's built into the Bixby Studio, and it's actually really, really powerful, especially if you're building something more complicated. We all know as developers that building unit tests for what you develop is best practices. Well, stories really let you build a unit test, and they're pretty powerful because you can go through in a story and it essentially records your steps of what's happening. And then you can set up assertions and saying, okay, if I did this and did this, then I want to make an assertion that this was actually displayed on the UI. Really, really powerful to build unit tests into your voice interaction. Like I said, if you build something more complicated is even more valuable. And I want to highlight, there's actually a video that a colleague of mine did for the Samsung Developer Conference late last year. It's called Debugging and Testing Capsules with Bixby Developer Studio. I have a little tiny CC link there. This is a really great video. So I went to this presentation. I was like, I'm going to support my colleague, but I know all this stuff. Wrong. I learned a ton in that presentation about not only about things you can do with stories, but about how to debug your capsules and the capabilities of the debugger. So I highly, highly recommend that you take a look at that video. And this is a good chance for you to mention that this whole presentation we will share. We'll share it on the @Bixby Developers Twitter within half an hour of ending this this webinar. So go check the @Bixby Developers Twitter for that. We're going to tell you a little bit more about some bonuses maybe you can get if you follow us as well, but I'll wait for a bit to tell you that. All right. All right. So there's my kind of short, kind of like 5 tips of things that I see some capsules do, but a lot of capsules don't, may or may not be applicable to your capsule. But I think they're really powerful Bixby features that I wanted to highlight because I think if it works in your capsule and is applicable, it can really make your capsule go from, I like to always talk about going from good to great. One of the ways to go from good to great is really fully feature all of the capabilities of your capsules. On this slide, really just a call to action. So, I've been involved with the voice industry for now, I guess, almost 3 years. And, it's really been dominated by thinking about smart speakers, which makes a ton of sense. And what people have been building has been very smart speaker centric. But as we build and enable voice in other devices, so as we enable it, well, it's enabled on phones, but they enable it on TVs and smart appliances and watches, which you can build for today with Bixby, and the marketplace for those is coming later this year. Then I encourage you to think about, hey, a voice experience on a TV could be incredibly different than past voice experiences. Or a voice experience on a watch with a little 1-inch screen is probably very different. So to my mind, these additional devices that are voice enabled actually should unleash a bunch of creativity in the voice space around, hey, all my thinking has been around kind of smart speaker centric thinking, but think beyond the smart speaker and think of, hey, I'm going to build an experience that is absolutely amazing on the TV that may not make sense on other devices, or an experience that works in the watch in other devices, or maybe they're complementary, but maybe the experience in the watch with a 1-inch screen is different, or maybe you're in a game and you play a different role in the watch than you do in the TV. I just think there's a ton of creativity that can be unlocked by these additional devices. And that's why I say it's a call to action to the industry. Okay, so I want to point out some resources. If you've been doing Bixby development, you're probably aware of many of these. But first is BixbyDevelopers.com, homepage for everything Bixby, where you download the IDE and where you can get started. GitHub.com/Bixby Developers. That's our GitHub repo, lots of open source code, some simple capsules to get you started, some little capsules that basically show you how to do one thing with Bixby, and then some more complicated things where I wanted to kind of showcase the Bixby features are in there. Notice Bixby Developers, that's all you have to remember across all these channels. Okay, Twitter. So we're pretty active on Twitter. We're at Bixby Developers. So if you are not following us, please do follow us there. And I'm going to tell you, because you're in this webinar, you're going to get the first chance to jump in on this. We're going to be giving some awards away this summer, limited to our Twitter followers. Some more to come around that, but if you're not following, go follow Bixby Developers so you can be in on those awards that are exclusive to people who follow us on Twitter. All right. YouTube channel, Bixby Developers channel, chock full of tutorials. My colleague Jonathan, who introduced himself earlier, is absolutely prolific at making these really, really amazing video tutorials about how to do everything from, I'd say, kind of the simple stuff to what right now we have some more intermediate stuff. We're looking at some more advanced things. We think videos are kind of the perfect complement to the written word that's in the docs at BixbyDevelopers.com. And then finally, Facebook, Bixby Developers, a lot of the same content really as you'd find on Twitter. But if you prefer to interact with us via Facebook, then please do. Okay, and with that, I'm going to start out, kind of our AMA, Ask Me Anything time about Bixby. It could be about something about this presentation. It could be a comment. It can be, let me admit one more person. It can be anything you like about Bixby development. I did want to share our contact information. So once again, Roger Kibbe, at Roger Kibbe on Twitter. I'm pretty active there. So if we'd like to follow each other, follow me. You can also get a hold of me on LinkedIn. We can follow each other. And then John without the H. What a great Twitter handle he has. Much more creative than mine. And that is his LinkedIn link. And like I said, you got to go to at Bixby Developers. I will share a link to this presentation so you can take a look at it later today for anything you missed. These links or some of the links that I shared earlier are just for your own information. And with that, I am going to stop the share. And I am going to ask my colleague Jonathan if what questions there might be.
Yeah, sure. So if you guys have any questions, just drop them in the chat. Jenny Steinhaus had the first question, which is, what is the timeout on responses?
Yeah, so it's 8 seconds. You have 8 seconds to do that, so that should be pretty familiar if you've done other. And then it prompts you, there's a reprompt, not currently controllable, the text and reprompt, but we'll fix that. And then you have another 8 seconds. So that should be pretty familiar to you if you're coming from Alexa or Google, because everybody uses 8 seconds as their timeout value. And that, once again, that would be, reminder, that's in the Hi Bixby or HEF mode when you've asked for Bixby via voice. If you ask for it via the button, the timeout is something like 15 minutes, right? There's a really long time for the user to respond with the button.
And another question from Jenny. She asks, can you start typing, then switch to the voice to finish? And I believe this is talking about the autofill.
Well, that's a good question. I don't, I've never tried that.
So I can kind of answer this one. When you type in the autofill, you'll have the keyboard open, and you can always use Bixby dictation whenever the keyboard is open on a Samsung phone. So in a way, yes, you can switch to voice to finish trying to type out what you were trying to type out. But let's say you're not using the keyboard and you're just on the autofill input screen, then you can always use voice to just like, let's say you're typing in red and then you wanted a red thing to show up, right? Then you could just use voice and say red instead, right? So the capsule should be properly trained at that point to handle a voice input of, instead of the keyboard input as well. So I'd give that, a yes to that question. And just to, I guess, catch up on a few other things, Suzaiman says, nice to see you. Nice to see you again, Suzaiman. And MCD says, nice to meet you both. Nice to meet you too. Thank you guys for coming to join us. And Raquel, I hope that you managed to see Roger's presentation. And yeah.
If you didn't, can I just jump in? So we are definitely recording this and we'll stick this up on YouTube. If we don't, let's see, it's Friday. Let's give us till sometime Monday. There's pretty quick to stick up there. So go look at our YouTube channel. And plus, like I said, if you want to just see the presentation at Bixby Developers, I'll share a PDF of the presentation there so you can start taking a look at it, or jump on YouTube and I'll have that replay there. So I don't know what was going on. I know in this time of COVID, I've certainly had a little bit of my fun with Zoom, occasionally doing strange things. So maybe you were having some Zoom fun and games.
Yeah, so then Jeff asks, why would you randomize results? How would you do it? And why are they not random in the simulator?
So there's a keyword. So you can say random into what I see this most often done is with dialogue, because one of the kind of VUI best practices with dialogue, right, when you're using voice, is not to repeat the same thing over and over and over again, because you start sounding like a robot. So it's kind of exactly the opposite of what you do with the UI. So when you're creating your dialogue, right, and you can create various message and templates, right, you can, outside of those templates, you basically use the random tag and it will choose one of the random ones. That should be working. If that isn't working in the simulator, then you have a setting turned off in the simulator. And I am forgetting what it is, but I will go find it in a second. Maybe Jonathan, there's another question you can answer while I'm finding this setting. It's something that sometimes people turn off in the simulator. It's not entirely intuitive. And if you do it, what happens is the first one is chosen in the simulator, but then you test on device and random works. So any more questions? Let me fire up Studio.
I think we're all caught up for now.
All right, we'll keep the questions coming.
And next question is, are you opening up more NO categories? Are any of them empty? NO categories, yes, there's new ones being added regularly. I'm not exactly sure, the exact release timeline, but they're being added continuously. And off the top of my head, I'm not sure which ones might be empty, but I'm sure some of them are empty, and you guys can go to the documentation and look at the NL categories and then just try some of the utterances out. And if no capsules pop up, that's a good time to build a capsule for that category to potentially get yours, featured up there. So,
so to answer your question about why random wouldn't be working, if in the simulator, actually, let me just share my screen for 1 second. Okay, hopefully you can see the simulator, and I've opened settings right here. So for the user, and under this learning, At some point, this is by default set, you turn this off, and this is not intuitive. Matter of fact, I think it's a little bit of a bug in the simulator there. But if you turn off selection learning, which really is a personalization feature for Bixby, for some reason, and it also turns off the ability for random to work in the simulator. So if random's not working in a simulator, go under learning, turn that selection learning back on, and that should re-enable learning. And we obviously have a bug. It should be, maybe it should say selection learning and random, or random should be a different setting. But for now, that's how it works.
So Jenny asked, with refresh on views, does it wake the display if it's gone to sleep? And I can answer this one. I've used refresh quite a bit. So on production, refresh does not wake your phone up if it's gone to sleep. In fact, the opposite behavior actually happens. If you lock your phone screen, or if your phone has gone to sleep while it's waiting for a refresh, it will actually cancel the refresh. So let's say, you know, a live example of this you can try my capsule quiz at trivia, and basically at the tutorial screen, it waits 8 seconds and it moves on to the next. Then it moves on to the first question. So if you lock your phone, what happens is that you actually are stuck on that screen because the refresh no longer fires anymore. So really, it's the opposite behavior of, you know, waking it up. It stops the refresh completely when the phone goes to sleep. So this is to, I'd assume, prevent people from, you know, just refreshing and waking up your phone and waking Bixby up, you know, like who knows when after you stop using it, right? So that's kind of the mentality behind it. Fred asks, is there a way for a refresh after an action is completed? And yes, so when you're in a result view, which is usually when a refresh takes place, I mean, you can refresh at, you know, input views as well, but at a result view, you can have a refresh. So it would wait like 8-10 seconds or whatever, and then it would fire whatever the refresh is asking to do, or whatever the refresh is programmed to do.
I mean, isn't it fair to say refresh is always after an action is completed, I think, because you're always waiting there. The action is completed and refresh says essentially re-execute that action. I'm simplifying a little bit, but conceptually.
Right. You can re-execute the action. You can take a completely different action. I do know refresh can be useful in input views as well, because let's say you have some information that has to be updated, I don't know, every 5 seconds or something. You know, the input view can refresh and show you updated information. So yeah, I mean, the refresh is a very powerful thing, and I do recommend it for, you know, continued engagement and continuity in your Bixby apps.
Great. All right. What else we got, guys? It's AMA. Ask us anything. So love the Bixby questions, but feel free to ask John or I anything about, you know, professionally, what we do, how we get started, whatever you like.
So Fred asked me, are new marketplaces coming soon?
And the answer is yes. Can't reveal any details, but new marketplaces are coming soon. And if I were you, I might target those kind of, well, we'll just say the small devices first. Leave it at that.
Okay. And Pete is asking, how do you target a Samsung device?
I'm not sure I understand that question, unless it's how do you target a particular device, maybe? So if it's how do I, so by default, if you've been, yeah, let's like a watch or TV. That's what I thought. Yeah, so by default, when you just create a capsule, it's been you've probably been setting as the target Bixby ENUS, what is it? I
Mobile.
can't remember that. Let me show you in the studio. Let me show you in the studio. Actually, I have Movie Agent up here. So I'm gonna, hang on, share my screen again, and let me show you that. Bixby Studio, share. All right, so this is Movie Agent, which is downloadable on GitHub. And this is the capsule.bxb. And this actually is targeted at all of them. So you can see this is that what I've highlighted there, Bixby mobile-en-us, US English mobile devices. So that's phones and tablets. But look at these additional targets. So the TV, the watch, and the fridge. That's the TV, the watch, and the fridge. And when I add those, here's what's happened. If I go back into the simulator and go change over to the Movie Agent. Now you probably have never played with this, but look at that target pull down. Looks like Bixby Mobile, TV, watch in. So, right, if I just did, that's what it looked like in mobile, but let me quickly show you what it looks like on the watch. I change it over to watch. Notice the simulator turned into a round watch face, and then I would scroll down, excuse me, with a watch, with the on the watch. So that is the simple and easy way. Is you just go in and adding these targets. Excuse me, I have really bad allergies, guys. Nothing worse than that. You also want to definitely check your UI. A little hint there is, so the fridge and the mobile are quite similar. The fridge is kind of a wide screen mobile, almost essentially a tablet. So usually the UI works pretty well on that. The watch, you definitely shrunk things down to, you know, that small screen. And so some things look really good, but some things, they work, but they're not optimal. So you can go and highlight and target those. The TV is really different because by default, it's kind of a long kind of vertical stripe at the bottom with whatever's playing in the background. So you need to think about that. Usually it works pretty good in the TV, but if you really wanted to get serious about TV, you might test on the TV and really optimize the UI. The whole idea of Bixby Views is to make it so it works pretty darn well. I'll say you get the good, with just out of the box across all those devices. You want to go from good to great, you probably go in there and actually go and do some specific targeting there. And I think, Jonathan, you just released a video about this, or you're ready to release a video about this. Is that not true?
For multi-devices, we have the, I think we have a video on it somewhere, right? Yeah.
All right, we'll find it. That's what, you know, too much content. You can't remember your own videos and things like that. But we're excited about that, and look for more around multi-device development to be released.
And he said that we can't see the simulator. So, you know. And okay, Morrison Chang asks, is there a known max code size or heap size for a capsule? And yes, there is. The number is fairly internal, so you know, it's somewhere. There is a max code size and heap size.
Yeah, there's also something that if you're taking too many CPU resources, it shuts down your capsule rate.
Yeah.
So right, with the idea, if you were trying to mine Bitcoin in your capsule code, it would shut you down. But it could be pretty big. I'd be curious the use case you're running into that that's happening. Remember also, I would say that what is running in Bixby in the JavaScript locally isn't really designed for heavy computational purposes. If I was doing something computationally intense, then I would put that, you know, on AWS or GCP, front it with an API, and then I build my voice presence, you know, Bixby or any of our competitors out in front of that, and not leave that code there. It's not really kind of best practices to have a bunch of code all together there. But I don't know your particular use case. You can reach out to us directly for specifics if you have a particular use case that you're concerned about. Let's see, I see a question from Jeff. How do you guys recommend organizing your capsules if you have multiple options in terms of content, languages, and device targets? Okay, there's really a couple ways to do this. Sorry. Device targets. So let's, if it's simple, in other words, sometimes the device targets, let's use that as an example. And it looks pretty good, but on a watch, which was looking at something yesterday where just a couple of like something that was kind of side by side, it needed to be, is kind of a horizontal orientation. It would look great on everything, but in the watch, it kind of cut off the ends there. And so you wanted something more vertical. In that case, what you would do is you could just use an if statement. And if you want to find what the variable is, there's a thing called $can. And is it, Jonathan, is it device type, device in can?
It's a $can.device equals Bixby hyphen and then device name. And
yeah.
Single quotes. The syntax is specific and it will be in the documentation soon.
Right. So that's how, if there's just simple changes there, then you can separate things like that. As things get more complicated, then it's all based on the naming structure of your directories. I don't remember exactly how this works. I know it's pretty well documented, but Jonathan, you remember how it is if you have, let's see if we have an example here. I'm looking in here. Now, if you create, for instance, tell you what, we're going to get back to you. Look at our Twitter handle. We'll get back to you on that. So I'll just say this to say, for very simple things, just use $can.device and you can just handle everything. But that can get crazy, right? Too many ifs in code and your brain starts exploding, at least mine does. Then you can actually separate them out and there's a naming structure.
Yeah. You can make a folder, an entirely new folder with the target name like Bixby watch US, something like that. And then if you put view files in there that have the same match pattern as your general view file, then it will, when you're on the watch, for example, it will use the view file in that folder over the view file in the other folder.
Yeah, it's an inheritance structure kind of. If it's there, it'll use the most specific thing.
Yeah.
From most specific to least specific, that actually works with languages too. So like if I had, if I had French and I had French Canadian and we don't support those yet, but French and French Canadian French, and I had French, it would just work. But then I could also override things by having the actual locale in there. So there's a structure in Bixby based upon most specific to least specific and an inheritance pattern that works there. Really good question. We'll throw an example or two out on Twitter afterwards, showing you how to do that.
Jenny asks, can you force ATF mode?
No. So if the user uses user uses the button, they're in home mode. Excuse me.
And Jeff asks, any exciting new features like library capsules, SSML, or video?
Yeah, so I think there's some, there's a couple new library capsules there that are around being able to text people and send and actually call people that were just recently added. Sometimes these things get caught up in release notes. And frankly, our bad, we don't do as good a job as we should about highlighting some new features that come out. SSML, go check it out. We're going to add some exciting stuff is coming really soon. We've been kind of adding tags there. And video, I don't know how new this is, but you can definitely embed YouTube or Vimeo videos in Bixby. I think that particularly, I'll say YouTube opens up a lot of creative possibilities, right? Around kind of a voice-driven kind of video experience. Think of a voice-driven YouTube channel. You could build something like that as long as because you can embed those YouTube videos in a Bixby view.
So Fred said to me that texting and calling libraries are big news. And I guess I would say I personally don't know of that being on the roadmap. I mean, Roger, do you know that?
What's that?
Like texting and calling libraries?
I think they're actually public now, as far as I know.
Oh, okay.
So
fine.
I think they just came out. But yeah, I might be correct. Correct me if I'm wrong. If they're not out, they're coming. You got a sneak preview if they're not out because they're coming soon.
Okay. So let's see.
All right, guys, we have time for a couple more questions.
Mm-hmm.
And then we are gonna do, since y'all stayed with us for so long, we have an Amazon gift card, I think for $30. We're gonna give it away to one of you randomly. So stay till the end, but I got about 5 minutes more questions, and then we'll do a little drawing for that Amazon gift card. So question, Jeff, anything new on GitHub template updates? Let me just go backwards in that question. So template updates, I'm not aware of any new templates on there, but that's a kind of ongoing sort place where we're developing. On GitHub, I don't think, I mean, we incrementally add and do that, but I will say that more recently, we have not been making a huge number of new contributions to GitHub. I will say that as we create tutorial videos, often we create accompanying YouTube code there. What I'd really ask, and maybe this is a question to the community, and feel free to share this back by contacting us or Bixby Developers Twitter or that, is what isn't there that you guys would like to see? What isn't there in the documentation? What isn't there in sample code? You can also contact, if you're on Bixby Slack, you can contact us there. That's a great way to do it, because then I really like that way, because then we can have a back and forth to understand it. So yeah, you help us understand what would be helpful for you as developers. Documentation, sample code wise, tutorial video wise. I love to hear what you guys are thinking.
So Jenny asks, are your cats doing okay in lockdown, Jonathan? And I will say yes, but I do think that they might miss some their alone time that they used to have. But you know, well, I think they're doing good. And MCD is asking, any golden rule to recommendations to work with APIs? I'll create my first capsule soon.
I don't know if there's a goal. I have just a couple things to think about. So one thing that made me get people confused is if you're kind of coming from a JavaScript Node background, right? You know, like, oh my God, I'm calling an API, and I got to write a callback, or more modern, I'm writing a promise, right, to handle the asynchronous call there. You can, that's actually built into the Bixby, the library, so the HTTP library, so you don't have to worry about that. I mean, behind the scenes, right, there's a promise being taken care of there. So it's just a blocking call. Think of it just a blocking call, waiting for the results there. But yeah, no, I'd say go through and try things, and you can definitely, there's some examples of API usage on GitHub. There is a GitHub project with a bunch of examples. And in this GitHub project, there's about 15 different capsules. And one of them is around making HTTP calls. So definitely take a look at that and try that there. But yeah, a lot of capsules, I mean, it's pretty common. I need to call an API and take a look at the sample code and documentation. That's a place where we tried to really spend some time on the API and the sample code to try to make it easier, because in the past it was a little more too terse, I'd say.
Okay, so Matt Lang asks, any best practices for capsule discoverability? Are there any ways to optimize for search in the marketplace?
Yeah, okay, so great question. Discoverability and voice, what a challenge. Yeah, so I mean, for sure, I'll just say at the meta thing, you know, spend some time, you know, with the metadata that drives the marketplace to make it look good. I've seen this on Bixby, and I've seen it with our competitors where there's somebody obviously spent an enormous amount of time and effort coding something, and then they spent 5 minutes on the metadata that drives the marketplace, and it doesn't look good even though it's an amazing experience. But there's tags that help with search, and you can definitely do that and definitely utilize those, because as people are starting to enter those, that's what drives that autocomplete there, the name of your capsule and those tags there. The other thing you can look at is natural language categories. I'm not going to go into depth on these, but if your Bixby capsule is in a particular what we call a category, it can actually be the default. An example I do, and there's actually a video on a YouTube poster on this, is Big Sky, the weather capsule. You can set it as a default, so you can say, hi Bixby, what's the weather? Instead of using the built-in weather capsule, it uses Big Sky. There's a way to enable that in your own capsule. So basically the problem of discoverability is largely eliminated because people don't need to use your actual capsule name. So, but that could be a whole discussion in and of itself. Okay, one more question and then we'll do the raffle.
Okay, let's see. Frank asks, can we add a YouTube link to our capsule in the Bixby Marketplace description?
Sure. I mean, you can, there's not a special code place for it, but yeah. in the description, you can definitely add it. What I don't believe is not clickable
right
there. So,
and we'll take one more from Jeff. Any details on the next office hours?
Well, we're thinking about doing these once a month, and what will be a topic. I think we have some pretty cool features coming out. So we're going to some revamped ways of handling some things. So I think that's what it'll be about. But I'll actually throw that question back to you guys around what would you like to see office hours about? Okay. So Jeff, let's do the raffle. Are you guys ready? Who wants to win 30 bucks? All right. Trying to do my best David O impression here. So let me see. Let me go unmute Jeff.
David has given the thumbs up. Maybe we should unmute him.
Okay. Well, no, I can't. I don't seem to be able to unmute him. Zoom added all these security features that make it fun now to work with. I get why they did it. Okay.
Well, thanks for unmuting me, but I can't take this away from David. He's the man.
All right. Well, but we want to do, David, you want to do this presentation?
You know what? What are we gonna do? We're gonna pick a number. Or we're gonna
yeah. So pick a number. Jeff, do you have a list of all the attendees with numbers next to them?
Yes.
All right, David. You go choose. And how many attendees are there, Jeff?
15.
15. All right, David.
All right. Well, I'm gonna
give me a number between 1 and 15.
I'm gonna go with lucky number 3.
Lucky number 3. And Jeff.
Frank Engelman.
Frank
All right,
Engelman.
Frank. Awesome.
All right, Frank. Well, I was going to say, give us your contact info in the chat, but we have your contact info, Frank. So you get a Bixby, Amazon, $30 gift card. So thanks for attending, everyone.
Congrats.
Go ahead, David.
No, just congrats, everyone. Thank you so much for being part of the Bixby community. Great job, Roger and Jonathan. And thanks, Jeff. And yeah, thank you, developers, for attending. Thank you so much.
Yeah,
David,
thanks everyone. Hey, keep it going. So follow us on Twitter, and we'll share this information out with you. I know this presentation, and we had that one open question that we couldn't answer around how to target with directory names various devices. We'll throw that information in there. And thanks a lot, guys. I hope everyone is staying safe out there.
Yeah. Thanks, guys. Thank you for coming.
All right, take it easy, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.